So, hello friends. So, today I'll be talking about this important topic. We are overusing antibiotics in the garb of sepsis. So, this talk I gave it on 20th March 2021 in Bareilly in UP and Uttarakhand state meet. So, it's a very important topic in the light of growing resistance within our country, which seems to be at the forefront worldwide. So when you look at the human and economic cost of antimicrobial, why this topic is important? Because of the emergence of antimicrobial resistance within our country, which seems to be ahead of most other nations in the world. And if you look at this global data, antimicrobial resistance constitutes around fifth leading cause of death, only after cancer, diabetes, diarrhea, and road traffic accidents. And if we extrapolate it, these figures to 2050, the projected figures are even more quite staggering. So in 2050, if the trends continues the way it is, so there would be 10 million deaths every year with a GDP dropping by 2 to 3.5%, which amounts to 100 trillion US dollars. So this is the sort of projections one has put in if the antimicrobial resistance continues the way it is occurring at this point of time. And when you look at deaths attributable to antimicrobial resistance every year, so Asia accounts to the maximum load for AMR, and this is followed by Africa, and this is followed by Latin America, and North America, and Europe. So, and India, as I said, is always been at the forefront. So it's all the more prudent that we discuss this topic. And every listener would agree with me that we are overusing antibiotics, and we may label multiple conditions as sepsis erroneously and start treating these patients with antibiotics. And the result of this is the spread of lethal bugs with resistance. And one of the example is NDM strain that started in Delhi in India, and then it soon spread its tentacles to China, and then it went to Europe in 2009, then to North America, so on and so forth. And this is reflected with increased use of carbapenems in our country. And if you see this data, India accounts to third largest consumer of carbapenems worldwide. And if you look at the total antibiotic consumption, India seems to be leading the list, and that seems to be exponentially increasing in every decade. So if you look at the gray figure, this is the 2000, and the blue one is the 2010. So in essence, so these slides really depict how the overusage of antibiotics or indiscriminate usage of antibiotics seems to be prevailing very much in India. And amongst all the countries that you see in this figure, if India is consuming large number of antibiotics, it only speaks about lack of rationale in at least significant proportion of these patients. So now coming to the topic, so how do we dwell on this topic, over usage of antibiotic in sepsis? So the way I look at it is the whole sepsis definition, the new definition that we talk about, there are a lot of limitations and caveats. And by applying this definition, one would tend to overuse antibiotics is what one could conclude. And then there is this whole controversy on early antibiotic usage. So if you look at this surviving sepsis guidelines, it talks about administering antibiotics within 1 hour. And that is a huge problem because there's no real robust evidence to say giving antibiotics within 1 hour really makes a difference to the outcome. And on the contrary, we may be indiscriminately using more antibiotics. And we look into the evidence for that. And there's a whole lot of conditions in ICU which behave like sepsis, but not necessarily that is sepsis. And we end up throwing antibiotics for these patients. And the typical patients are someone with pancreatitis or with a subarachnoid bleed or intracranial bleed. We typically have a surge response and a small fever spike, a small rise in the counts, and one would label it as sepsis and start treating with antibiotics. So these are some of the mimics that tend to occur in ICU. And usage of antibiotics in any of these conditions lead to antibiotic resistance. And because of these conditions, you throw in antibiotics, and many of the times the overzealous initiation of antibiotics would, even in a case which is sepsis, may be inappropriate. And this inappropriate antibiotic usage also has very distinctly shown to increase the resistance patterns. So let's touch about the first topic, the first domain, the caveats in sepsis definition. So the most important aspect we understand is to use antibiotics in an optimal way, because suboptimal usage or non-optimal usage leads to increased resistance, and there's no new antibiotics in the pipeline. And the literature has shown that 30 to 60% of the times that we use antibiotics, it is unnecessary, inappropriate, or suboptimal. And inappropriate usage of antibiotics would be due to overprescription or due to the misprescription. And if you look at these studies, epidemiological data has shown the increase in the antibiotic usage is directly proportional to the emergence and dissemination of resistant organisms. So the more antibiotics we use, so more is the likelihood of emergence and dissemination of resistant bugs. So let's look into what are the caveats of sepsis definition. So if you look at the new definition of sepsis, what does it say? It says life-threatening organ dysfunction due to the dysregulated response of the host to any infection, be it bacterial or virus. So it doesn't talk about the type of bug that you may have isolated or any other thing. It only talks about life-threatening organ dysfunction. If you apply this definition, and there can be dysregulated host response to a viral infection, and you may be throwing antibiotics. And very often, every listener here would agree, we typically know there may be a what of viral infection with multi-organ, which very much looks like a dengue or rickettsia. And many a times you would see there are antibiotics thrown in these patients, which obviously would lead to detrimental outcomes. And there are these non-infectious conditions like pancreatitis, burns, or even polytrauma, which mount a SIRS response and which is misinterpreted as sepsis, and antibiotics are thrown in. And it could be a transfusion reaction or drug-related like organ dysfunction due to dysregulated host response, or it can be non-infectious causes like typically IC bleed, subarachnoid hemorrhage, so on and so forth, which tend to produce some dysregulated host response. Or it could be an underlying disease condition like a malignancy, which itself may have progressed, and that could lead to organ dysfunction. And I'm sure everyone would agree that in oncology, especially, you would see any patient with any sort of a deterioration of any sort, antibiotics are thrown at indiscriminately and in the garb of sepsis. I'm sure we have looked at this, and cultures don't yield anything. Procalcitonin may be low, but still antibiotics are given for every. It is almost as a blanket rule, every patient is put on antibiotics. So all these are leading to increase in the resistance in our country, which is a worrying trend. And we understand only 40% of the cultures are positive, and cultures are only an adjunct to the diagnosis. So I would say putting antibiotics to any of these conditions, which all of us have put in, including me, would tantamount to medical malpractice. That's why it is referenced 60% of the times that we prescribe antibiotics to a patient in ICU. So please understand that it would not be required, and it would be inappropriate, and we would be contributing to the cost burden of the patient, and we would be contributing to the emergence of antimicrobial resistance. So this is something which each one of us should put our mind into and try to sort of put more measures to correct ourselves. And when you look at this new definition of sepsis, so they have introduced something called QSOFA. So what does this say? So in the out of hospital or ward setting, that one could apply this QSOFA to try and see if possible lingering sepsis may be something that may be there. So, and these constitute altered mental status and respiratory rate more than 22 and systolic blood pressure less than 100. So I'm sure any of you listening would know that any patient in ICU would have any of these. Suppose you have a stroke patient, he may have altered mental status and he may have a little bit of tachypnea. So that doesn't mean that we consider that it is possible sepsis and we throw in antibiotics. So there are caveats to this application of QSOFA, and QSOFA is not designed to pick up sepsis. Basically, it is a prognostic tool. I think that is something which all of us should very clearly understand. The QSOFA and SOFA are the mortality predictors, and they're not tests for sepsis. And this QSOFA is often misinterpreted or misunderstood as a sepsis screen, and then antibiotics could be thrown at it the way one would look at it. And as I said, there are umpteen number of conditions in ICU which would fulfill your QSOFA criteria. It could be a stroke, or it could be a it could be a cardiac condition, it could be a cardiogenic shock, it can be MI. Any of these can have tachypnea, can have little hypotension, and this could be interpreted as sepsis. And when they compared the sensitivity of QSOFA with the SIRS, and they found the sensitivity was much lower than the SIRS criteria which we used to apply before. and the specificity was higher than the SIRS score. And if you look at this table, so there is a lot of complex overlap or interplay of other conditions in ICU. And if you see there could be an underlying MI, and the secondary abnormality may be the sepsis or hemorrhage. So as I said previously, a stroke patient or sedative intoxication, he could be attended with a bit of tachypnea and blood pressure issue, and that may be leading to hypoxemia. And all this could be misinterpreted as sepsis and antibiotics thrown in. So basically, it is not as straightforward as someone has obtundation, has a little bit of tachypnea, it fits into the category of sepsis, because there is a lot of complex interplay of other conditions which tend to overlap the underlying condition, and things get little blurred in trying to ascertain whether it is the primary abnormality is sepsis or the primary abnormality is other non-infective condition. So these are some of the caveats of applying the new definition of sepsis. And now we'll move to the second domain on early antibiotics. So there is overwhelming sort of a vigor in trying to push early usage of antibiotics. So if you look at the 2018 update of surviving sepsis guidelines, they suggest within 1 hour we need to do lactate. Okay, that is reasonable. Send blood culture, that is reasonable. Give some fluid resuscitation, 30 ml per kg. You could argue whether that number is good enough or it should be less than that. But okay, we give fluids, we start vasopressors if it is not responsive to vas. All these are okay. But administering antibiotics within 1 hour, that is a debatable point. And when you scout through the evidence, whether there is really good evidence to substantiate that giving within 1 hour will change outcome, that becomes a debatable topic. And you would see the studies coming out. So there's not much evidence to substantiate that giving within 1 hour changes outcome. So what are the evidence? So I will quote 3 studies. So this is the first study, which is called M-SHOCK NET study. It looked at association between timing of antibiotic administration and mortality from septic shock in patients treated with a quantitative resuscitation protocol. So this study came from US, M-SHOCK NET, a study done in 3 US hospitals. So they took cryptic versus overt shock. They put resuscitation targets with CVP, MAP, mixed venous saturation, lactate. So they had 291 patients. 119 were put in the group where patients were triaged to and the timing of administration of antibiotics. The second group had patients with shock who had already developed septic shock and the duration of antibiotic administration. So what they found is, after the patient is triaged and the time taken to the administration of antibiotics, they found hourly delay in the administration of antibiotics post triage did not show any bearing on the mortality. And once the patient has developed a shock, the delay in administration of antibiotic after patient has already developed a shock or is admitted to ER with shock, hourly delay after the shock onset did not really make a difference in mortality benefits. So the conclusions the authors made was post triage, hourly delay, there was no increase in mortality. And after the onset of shock, even hourly delay in antibiotic did not lead to sequential increase in mortality. So this is the first study. The second study came from the Dutch group. So basically the title of this study is the association between time to antibiotics and relevant clinical outcomes in emergency department with various stages of sepsis, a prospective multi-center study. It was conducted in 3 Dutch EDs, and they used a PIRO score, which is to stratify different stages of sepsis. Primary outcome was to look at outside hospital survival and 28-day survival. Secondary outcome was to look at 28-day mortality. So what was the results? They looked at 1,168 patients. Overall mortality was 10%. So total of 1,168 patients were looked in, and they looked into patient group which got antibiotic within 3 hours, and they looked at patient group which got antibiotic within 6 hours. And when they looked at out of hospital 28-day survival, there was no difference. Either you give antibiotics within 3 hours or within 6 hours, there was no difference in mortality. So the conclusions the authors made was, in emergency department with mild to severe sepsis, you give antibiotics within 6 hours and reducing the time within that 6 hours. Give it either 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour. There was no association in improved outcomes. So these are the conclusions the authors made. So if you don't believe this study, then there was this third meta-analysis which came in 2015. the impact of timing of antibiotics on outcome in severe sepsis and septic shock. So this was a very big study. As you see, there are 11 studies, 16,178 patients, where they looked at the outcome. If you gave antibiotic more than 1 hour, more than 3 hours, or up to 5 hours hourly delay. And as you see, the odds of mortality, there was no difference. Either you give 1 hour, 3 hour, or more than 3 hours within 5 hours, there was no difference in outcome. So the conclusions the author made was antibiotic less than 3 hours or less than 1 hour of shock, there was no mortality benefit. So these three studies really do not substantiate this guidelines that has come into surviving sepsis saying that one needs to give antibiotics within 1 hour, and they put it as a quality indicator. It's not justified with the current evidence. And if you look at this forest plot, less than 3 hours, more than 3 hours, no difference. Less than 1 hour, more than 1 hour, there's no difference. And now, when you look at whether is it practical to give antibiotics within 1 hour, so if you look at these three landmark articles, the ARISE trial, which came from Australia, the PROCESS trial, which came from UK, and the PROMISE trial, which came from US, these are controlled trials. Even there, they could not give antibiotics within 1 hour because ARISE, it took 70 minutes to administer first antibiotics. PROCESS took 3 hours to give first antibiotics, and PROMISE took 2.5 hours to give first antibiotic. So even in controlled trials, it was not practical to give antibiotics within 1 hour. And so it is practically not feasible to adhere to the sepsis guidelines. And even if you adhere, you would end up giving inappropriate antibiotics and erratic use of antibiotics, which leads to antimicrobial resistance. So that would be the argument. And if you look at this important study, it's a very good study which came in Lancet Infectious Disease, where it showed if patient is hemodynamically stable, delayed administration of antibiotics did not worsen mortality, and administering antibiotics after one has got the culture reports, in fact, showed reduction in mortality, increased appropriateness of the antibiotics, and reduced the duration of antibiotics. So this is a very strong message that if someone is hemodynamically stable, possibly one could wait till you get an answer because there's no really rush in administering early antibiotics. And you could substantiate with this study that in fact it would increase your outcome. So by giving antibiotics early, there can be 60% likely the choice of antibiotics you pick up and the fact that you are giving antibiotics, the whole decision may be erroneous. And this would lead to increase in the cost burden, increase in the resistance. And if you have to subscribe to this study, it can even increase the mortality. And all this will beat the gospel that we follow of 3Ds, which is right dose, right duration, and de-escalation. So that's the sort of a sort of conclusions we could make. And by overzealous early administration of antibiotics, very likely we end up giving inappropriate antibiotics. And it is shown without having much answers, you throw in antibiotics, there is a huge possibility of giving inappropriate antibiotics, and that leads to bad outcomes. And if you look at this landmark trial from COLF, it's shown inappropriate antibiotics, the mortality is much higher as compared to appropriate therapy, 17.7% versus 42%. And we did a study in our own ICU in 2010, 75 patients, so 53 got appropriate and 22 patients got inappropriate. And we saw the mortality was much higher in patient group which got inappropriate antibiotic. So now the question to every listener is, okay, now you tell us that you don't give antibiotics within 1 hour. By giving it, we would cause more harm. Then what is the solution? How do we convince ourselves that we stop antibiotics and we absolutely sure that there's no infection? So there are solutions, because in ICU, I tell each of my trainees that the signs and symptoms of infections that be very similar to non-infectious. As many causes of fever or infections, more than that number would be non-infectious causes of fever, and we end up giving antibiotics to both these conditions. So one of the tool one could use is procalcitonin to convince yourself that there is no infection and we could safely stop antibiotics. Is there evidence? So there are three good trials that have come of late. So one is the PROROTA trial, which was done by the French group, came in 2010. So this was done in 67% of the mechanical ventilated patients. 50% had community acquired infections and 50% had hospital acquired infections. And they looked at the group where antibiotics were guided by the procalcitonin, and they saw that the antibiotic free days was higher in procalcitonin guided therapy, which is a good thing. And the outcomes were better in the procalcitonin group. And this is the most recent study which came 2018 from the Switzerland, which was a systematic review. So they looked at 11 randomized controlled trials constituting 2,252 patients. One group where procalcitonin was used to guide antibiotic therapy, mortality was significantly less compared to the group where procalcitonin was not used, and the duration of antibiotic also was significantly. So both these studies are telling us, what are they telling? They're telling that you don't give antibiotics in situation where there is no infection, you could reduce mortality, which goes on to re-emphasize by giving indiscriminate antibiotics, there is a direct correlation of increasing the mortality, which is not a good thing. So all the more reason to save lives, we may have to sometimes stop antibiotics where there is no infection and give antibiotics only to the patient where there is possible proven infection. And this is the most latest study which came just few months back, which came on 6th August 2020, which is called the PROGRESS trial. It came from the Greek group. So procalcitonin to reduce long-term infection associated adverse events in sepsis. So what did they find in this study? They had 266 patients, 125 patients had procalcitonin guided therapy and 131 had standard therapy. And they found that the infection related adverse events at day 180 was significantly less in procalcitonin group as compared to the standard group. And look at this. Seldom do we see in intensive care any of the studies showing mortality benefit. Here, 28-day mortality was significantly less in procalcitonin guided therapy as compared to standard. So all in all, ProRota trial, the Switzerland study, which is a meta-analysis by Weiss et al., and this PROGRESS study, all three are showing that by not using antibiotics in patients who do not have infections, we can significantly reduce the mortality, which is a very strong message for all the listeners here to adhere to these good practices and adopt to their clinical practice. And even it was shown the duration of antibiotics was significantly less. Most importantly, cost was curtailed. And this is terribly, terribly important in our country, where every intensive care patient is burdened with mounting costs. So the conclusions the authors made was in sepsis, procalcitonin guided therapy reduce the infection related adverse events, reduce the 28-day mortality, and reduce the cost to the patient. And very quickly, in 1 minute, I will talk about all the different sepsis mimics that prevail in ICU. As I said, as many infectious causes of sepsis are there, that many non-infectious presentation of sepsis would be prevailing. And many conditions like pancreatitis, burns, polytrauma, and I would include subarachnoid hemorrhage, IC bleeds, any neurological sort of a catastrophe, even large strokes, they typically present with some sort of a SIRS response or a reperfusion injury post thrombolysis. All this can manifest with SIRS sort of a picture, which could be misinterpreted as sepsis, and antibiotics could be thrown in. And you have a whole lot of these conditions in ICU, which are non-infectious, which can manifest with some signs and symptomology of sepsis, DKA, bowel obstruction, adrenal insufficiency, pulmonary embolism, even hypolemia, pancreatitis. Any of these insults to the body can manifest with dysregulated host response to the insult. So the take-home message, friends, at the end of it is sepsis, especially if you embrace the new definition and if you are a Puritan adopting the QSOFA score, please remember there are too many caveats to these definitions, and there are a lot of confounders, and there is a complex interplay of other conditions, and very often we would be erroneously labeling the patients as sepsis. And 60% if you adhere to this to the T, there can be likelihood of error in judgment. And the whole concept of giving antibiotics within 1 hour leads to overzealous and inappropriate antibiotic administration. Most importantly, this would increase the cost to the patient. It would increase the emergence of antimicrobial resistance. And all the studies have very clearly shown that it would even lead to increase in the mortality if we give antibiotics to the patients who do not need it. And it is not justified by conclusive. We saw 3 trials, MShockNet, the Dutch study, and another study which clearly showed, and the meta-analysis that came from the US group, that there is no evidence of giving antibiotics within 1 hour did not really make any difference. And it is not practical because the 3 landmark trials, Arise, Promise, Process, showed that it is humanly possibly not feasible to administer antibiotics within 1 hour, even in controlled trials. And the answer for all this is procalcitonin is appears to be a valuable tool at this point of time, which could be used as an adjunct to guide and convince yourself to stop antibiotics. And the study from Hanjic et al. Clearly shows that if patient is hemodynamically stable, and you could possibly wait for more answers to convince yourself that patient has sepsis, it is reasonable to start antibiotics after you get more answers, and maybe await your culture reports, which would come in 24 to 48 hours, and then start if patient is hemodynamically stable. So this would be my take home messages. So thank you very much. So I would end with this beautiful quote: you can't change what's going on around you until you start changing what's going on within you. So let us all together take a resolve to change ourselves in at least doing our bit to minimize indiscriminate usage of antibiotics. So thank you one and all.